Hi, I'm Leanne Lindsay, editor of Tinsel and Tine, and here's my mini movie reviews for The Woman King, The Silent Twins, and Disney's Pinocchio. The Woman King, Sony Pictures releasing, director Gina Prince-Bythewood, writer Dana Stevens, stunt coordinator Daniel Hernandez. So I'm so overjoyed that I've lived long enough to see movies like this made. The Woman King, it expands the narrative of black females of the early 19th century as other than slaves, but rather as rich protagonists and heroes. Gina Prince-Bythewood has been creating and directing films and TV for over 20 years, most notably Love and Basketball, and most recently The Old Guard for Netflix. If she had been a white man coming out of Sundance in 2000 with the accolades that she received, she would have had the opportunity to direct a feature as large scale as The Woman King long ago. But of course, back then it was even surprising that her film was shown at Sundance. And, that's the world we live in, can't change history, but it never hurts to point out the inequalities. Her latest film had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of 2022, where it was well received. What I love is that everyone who's seen Marvel's Black Panther can come to The Woman King already fans of the Dahomey Agoge, the real-life mighty women warriors that span from the 1600s to the 1800s in West Africa. We know this because of writer-director Ryan Coogler already depicted them as the Dora Milaje in the fictional nation of Wakanda. So Prince-Bythewood said her intention with this film was to create the magnitude and awe of epics like Gladiator and Braveheart, and I feel that she accomplished her mission with the help of course, her team that she built around her, Akin McKenzie, production designer, cinematographer Polly Morgan, costume designer Gresha Phillips, visual effects supervisor Sarah Bennett, editor Tara Lynn Shofire, and there's an evocative score by Terence Blanchard, and the South African composer Lebo M, who composed and produced 5 original songs for the film. But what makes The Woman King stand out are the incredible actors and relationships of the characters. Viola Davis, who's also a producer in the film, plays General Nanisca with fierce intensity, loyalty, and astuteness. Tuso Mbido plays Nawi, who after refusing to marry an old abusive rich villager, is disowned by her father, who deposits her outside the king's doorstep. It's then through her eyes we get pulled into the ways of this kingdom and the system of this tough warrior training. I think she was a great casting decision. I understand that she was in the show The Underground Railroad, which I've never seen, so this young actress is brand new to me, but I admire that she was able to go head to head with Viola Davis in every scene and hold her own, and that she possesses a beautiful countenance, but she's not someone traditionally cast to play a love interest in ingenue. The first person to acknowledge Nawi is Izogi, played by Lashana Lynch, who I have to admit didn't seem to add much to No Time to Die as the temporary 007, but she brings much to this role as one of the top Agoji fighters. Aminza, played by Sheila Atim, is General Nanisca's confidant and advisor. I really like this actress in Halle Berry's Bruised, and once again she's playing super tough yet tender. All these women had a grueling 5-month shoot in South Africa, and by now you've heard how they performed all these adroit, agile, fast-paced, badass fight choreography themselves. There was no CGI and no stunt doubles. Yay for them. No matter what your race, if you like action films which mix history and battles, you'll enjoy this movie, particularly the scenes of what it takes for the newbies to become a part of this fierce fighting regiment. But if you're black, there's a meaningful surge of pride to see your ancestors fight back against the oppressor and the colonizer. Obviously, this didn't happen enough in history, but knowing that a valiant fight was fought and won for a time does my heart good. I also read on Wikipedia that the last survivor of the Dahomey Amazons, the colonizers called them Amazons, is thought to have been a woman named Nawi. And in 1978, she was interviewed in the village of Quinta. She claims to have fought the French in 1892. She died in November of 1979, but she was well over the age of 100. Tinsel and Tine's rating for The Woman King, 5 out of 5. Pinocchio, Disney, writer-director Robert Zemeckis, co-writer Chris Weitz, visual effects supervisor Kevin Bailey, visual effects producer Sandra Scott, music composer Alan Silvestri, and Glenn Ballard. As a kid, like most, there were certain Disney animated movies my sister and I played over and over, so many, many times that scenes and bits of dialogue still pop into my head at unexpected moments. First and foremost, my favorite Robin Hood, but also Lady and the Tramp, The Aristocats, Jungle Book, and a few others. But there were two that we just felt were too dark to play very often, and in fact may have only played each twice, and that was Peter Pan and Pinocchio. These two gave us the shivers. But of course, I'm an adult now, and so far have loved each Disney live action remake, so I was excited to see this version of Pinocchio, directed by genius storyteller, Academy Award winning Robert Zemeckis. If you're not familiar with him, he has just a couple of little small movies under his belt, like the Back to the Future trilogy, Forrest Gump, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Castaway, The Polar Express. But with the other Disney remakes, I like to do a post on, like, comparing and contrasting the original animated movie with the live action, and I really just couldn't do that with this one because I have so little memory of Pinocchio. When we're sent Disney screeners, we're often given the production notes as well, and I did note that they did not go back to the original source material, which is a book by Carlo Collodi, but they really did use the 1940s Disney version as a template to outline the story, so that Pinocchio's adventure pretty much follows the animated version. They did modernize it a bit, adding in a couple of new characters, and just sort of the pacing is changed. But they tried to keep the story, the spirit and the tone of the original. They've also added a couple of new songs by Alan Silvestri and Glenn Ballard. Zemeckis' longtime collaborator or muse, Tom Hanks, plays the woodworking clockmaker Papa Geppetto. And you know what? He's adequate in the role. Like most of America, I mean, I really adored Tom Hanks in his day. But his later projects, particularly his recent interpretation of Colonel Parker and Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, it just feels forced. Um, so one of the new songs, When He Was Here With Me, is written for Geppetto to kind of talk sing, expressing his years of loneliness since his wife and son have died. And, it feels as though it's been quite some time since these two incidents have occurred, and you're not sure if they necessarily even happened at the same time. Joseph Gordon-Levitt voices Jiminy Cricket. He doesn't sound at all like the original, but it's also not Gordon-Levitt's usual vocal pattern either. The character, though, is wearing like this strange bandit's mask, is what it looks like. And I'm just wondering about the design choice of that. What I do recall of the original Pinocchio, however, is that Jiminy played a big part as Pinocchio's conscience. Yet in this version, he has little time to school Pinocchio, as this little cricket is just constantly in terrible danger and peril. The Blue Fairy, I remember almost nothing about from the original, but of course, someone has to grant Geppetto's wish. She's played by Cynthia Erivo in this rendition, and she plays her like good-natured and firm. She's not in it for very long, but rightfully they've changed it so that she sings Disney's theme song, When You Wish Upon a Star, instead of Jiminy, who does it in the animated version. And she did it Barbra Streisand style, where she sung it while filming the scene rather than, singing in a studio and then lip sync it later. Like we said, there are some new characters, but really I'll just let you find out about them on your own. What I don't get is why Geppetto would send a magical walking, talking puppet off to school on his own and then be surprised when he doesn't make it back home. But I mean, for the most part, the movie is just dark enough to retain that ominous nature, and yet there's unexpected, laugh out loud funny moments. And I guess overall, it's a good lesson on what it means to be true and honest and real. Uh, Tinsel and Tine rating 3.75 out of 5. The Silent Twins, focus features director Agnieszka Simulczynska, screenwriter Andrea Siegel, based on a 1986 book by journalist Marjorie Wallace. When I was growing up, I always said I'd have twins one day. Didn't have a preference of boys or girls, they could even be fraternal, one of each. I just felt it would be fascinating to see their bonds develop and witness this unique sibling relationship. Of course, I wound up not procreating at all, a story for another time. But even as I matured, not only did I rethink how much work twins would be, but I also thought, what if they're creepy, too identical and insular? What parent could handle that sense of separation from your children because they only require each other? Well, this is what happened to Barbados immigrants to the UK, Aubrey and Gloria Gibbons, played by Trevia Etienne and Nadine Marshall. These are the parents of the Silent Twins, June and Jennifer Gibbons, played by Letitia Wright and Tamara Lawrence. They are not neglectful parents. They seem to be very sweet people, but they have no idea what to do with these two troubled souls. The film starts out with warm tones of light playfulness, starting with like this really fun animated opening credits, and then the opening scene of the two girls, played by Leah Mondesir Simmons and Eva Ariana Baxter as the childhood twins. They're pretending to host a talk radio show with great patter and syncopated rhythm. You feel at first that this is not the movie you came to see, but soon we see their reality is nothing like their imaginative play. Instead, the girls are very somber, withdrawn children who stay completely silent when others are around. The film switches to gray, drab colors. The mother tells the girl's teacher and therapist she has no idea why they stopped talking. But then, after I saw the movie, I watched part of the documentary on the Silent Twins, and June says it was their speech impediment that first made them dummy up like that. That no one was able to understand them. They got so tired of constantly repeating themselves that they decided not to communicate with others at all. In the film, once the twins break their silence, Letitia and Tamara try to emulate this weird, really clamped jaw, severe lisp that the twins had. But in the movie, they still have to remain somewhat intelligible. But when I was listening to the real life June in the documentary, whatever went wrong with their speech pattern was very wrong and apparently incurable. I think the young actresses Leah and Eva do a good job portraying the twins growing up, conveying their strangeness and the hold that Jennifer seems to have over June when it seems like June might, break the weirdness and try to be pleasant or laugh or, even utter a word. The effect racism had on their development as the only black children in an all-white school is touched upon only briefly. And in fact, I feel like the childhood, it's just over too quickly in the film. I think that they needed to do more development with who they were younger. And there's nothing creepier than weird children. But soon we meet the young adult versions of the twins, and by this time the family has completely given up trying to communicate. Food is left outside their bedroom door, and the twinnies, as the parents call them, are left alone to just write fiction stories and poetry and create these macabre dolls and puppets. Much of this world, their fantasy world, is depicted as stop motion animation. The sequences are carefully crafted by artist Barbara Rupick. It's really beautifully creative, but it's also horrendously morbid. I'm still kind of shocked and amazed to see movies featuring black women in mainstream theaters, especially like, there were movies like Color Purple, and, there's been a million slave movies, but this is like these twins didn't need to be black. I mean, like I said, they did grow up in an all white school, and maybe that did have some things to do with their development problems, but mainly they're just like really weird people, and they could have been any race. And I just love that we're seeing, but the stories, though, that just happen to be about black female protagonists. Because when I started writing films in 2009, I would have had to go to like a small black film festival to see someone like me as a protagonist. I mean, we had Whitney Houston in the 90s and Tarantino's Jackie Brown. Maybe there were a few other exceptions, but something like The Silent Twins would not have been greenlit. Um, and because of that, it pains me not to rave about this movie. But this Polish filmmaker, she's provided all the ingredients and no seasoning. The Silent Twins is great with cinematic flourishes, but I wish we cared more about June and Jennifer. I wish it were gripping and that the scenes at the Mental Institute held more emotional impact. But still, there's a possibility that it could get some attention around award season, and I hope it does. Tinsel and Tine rating 3 out of 5.